Thank you, Ray. Jane, are you ready?
Yes. O thou compassionate Lord, thou who art generous and able, we are servants of thine, sheltered beneath thy providence. Cast thy glance of favor upon us. Give light to our eyes, hearing to our ears, and understanding and love to our hearts. Render our souls joyous and happy through thy glad tidings. O Lord, point out to us the pathway of thy kingdom and resuscitate all of us to the breast of the Holy Spirit. Bestow upon us life everlasting and confer upon us never-ending honor. Unify mankind and illumine the world of humanity. May we all follow thy pathway, long for thy good pleasure, and seek the mysteries of thy kingdom. O God, unite us and connect our hearts with thine indissoluble bond. Verily, thou art the giver, thou art the kind one, and thou art the Almighty.
Oh, thank you, Jane. Thank you very much. Tim, are you ready?
Yes, I am. As a precursor to my reading, I'd like to just state what an inspiration these two passages are, and how profound of a message they share with us. O Salman, the door of the knowledge of the ancient being hath ever been and will continue forever to be closed in the face of man. No man's understanding shall ever gain access unto his holy court. As a token of his mercy, however, and as a proof of his loving kindness, he hath manifested unto the men the day stars of his divine guidance, the symbols of his divine unity, and hath ordained the knowledge of these sanctified beings to be identical with the knowledge of his own self. Whoso recognizeth them hath recognized God. Whoso hearkeneth to their call hath hearkened to the voice of God. And whoso testifieth to the truth of their revelation hath testified to the truth of God himself. Whoso turneth away from them hath turned away from God, and whoso disbelieveth in them have disbelieved in God. Every one of them is the way of God that connecteth this world with the realms above, and the standard of his truth unto every one in the kingdoms of earth and heaven. They are the manifestations of God amidst men, the evidences of his truth, and the signs of his glory. It is clear and evident to thee that all the prophets are the temples of the cause of God, who have appeared clothed in diverse attire. If thou wilt observe with discriminating eyes, thou wilt behold them all abiding in the same tabernacle, soaring in the same heaven, seated upon the same throne, uttering the same speech and proclaiming the same faith. Such is the unity of these essences of being, those luminaries of infinite and immeasurable splendor. Wherefore should one of these manifestations of holiness proclaim, saying, I am the return of all the prophets? He verily speaketh the truth. In like manner, in every subsequent revelation, the return of the former revelation is a fact, the truth of which is firmly established.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much, Tim. Albert, are you ready?
I am. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. I'd like to begin by saying that in the Baha'i faith, we don't have clergy. And when we say that, oftentimes it's taken as a point of pride, something to distinguish us as a unique religion, something different from what you might have encountered in the past. What it means, on the other hand, isn't that the duties of clerics are no longer applicable in this day and age. It's that that's not a full-time job anymore. There isn't a select subset of us who are tasked with everybody else's spiritual development, every single one of us is tasked with everybody else's spiritual development. I'll also say that in the Baha'i faith, there is a tablet, a letter written by someone who has been given divine knowledge called the Most Holy Tablet. And within it is conferred the Most Holy Blessing. And this blessing is very simple. It's the ability for somebody to look past the name of a particular thing and study its essence and accept it for what it is, not what it's called. Gary Fleming went through that process in becoming a Baha'i. Raised a Catholic, he investigated religion instead of inheriting the religion that he was given by his parents. For that, he has been given the most holy blessing. And so while there's no clergy in the Baha'i faith, tonight we have the rare honor to hear from someone who has been given the most holy blessing and who does the work of a cleric, not only here every week praying on our behalf, but on alternating Saturdays in his own fireside that he's set up. I'll say one last thing. In the Baha'i Prayer for America, it is begged of God that this country become prosperous in spiritual degrees, even as it has in material ones. Gary is a man who embodies prosperity of the spirit and of the material life. Because as incredible as his soul has become after years of searching and being blessed in the way that he has, looking past that name and at that essence, he has been rewarded with an education in cultural anthropology and a degree in law. He has worked in 9 different countries, and he has a beautiful family, 3 children and 5 grandsons, along with his lovely wife out in New Mexico. Gary, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Elbars. By the way, I'm sorry I missed your call earlier today, but thank
No
you
worries.
so much. All right. Now, before I get into the actual topic on social and moral teachings from the perspective of the Baha'i faith, I want to give a little background on some things about the Baha'i faith, specifically background on progressive revelation and the manifestations of God. There are 2 categories of manifestations of God. There are those manifestations who have left us with a world religion and a book. And there are those manifestations that have revealed regional religions, have revealed God's word in smaller areas of the world. The manifestations that reveal the world religion include a number beginning with Krishna and ending today with Baha'u'llah. So back in approximately 2000 BC, Krishna revealed the Hindu faith, and the Hindu faith revolved around the concept of detachment. In approximately 1330 BC, Moses revealed the Jewish faith, which revolved around the principle of justice. In 1000 BC, approximately, Zoroaster revealed the Zoroastrian faith, revolving around the concept of purity. And in 560 BC, Buddha revealed the Buddhist faith, concentrating on peace and meditation. Christianity was revealed by Jesus Christ in 1 AD, concentrating on the principle of love. Muhammad revealed Islam in 622 AD, and that revolved around the concept of submission to the will of God. And then we have the dual manifestations that proclaimed eventually the Baha'i faith. We have the Bab, who revealed the Babi faith, in 1844 around the principle of universality, and he also announced the coming of Baha'u'llah, and Baha'u'llah in 1863 revealed the Baha'i faith, which concerns a number of principles that we will discuss a little bit somewhat later. When it comes to the manifestations, the regional manifestations, there are tens of thousands of them throughout the world. They reveal to people the word of God. They did not establish a world religion. There are many examples. One I'd like to bring up is the manifestation that is known as white buffalo calf woman, sometimes known as white buffalo maiden. And she was a manifestation of God. In fact, I'd like to relate this manifestation, white buffalo woman, to a very well-known American Baha'i by the name of Patricia Locke. Patricia Locke was a Lakota and a Chippewa woman. She was a member of the United States National Spiritual Assembly. She was also given the name Compassionate Woman. In fact, there's a book that has been recently published with that title. Her story provides us with a glimpse into the life of someone who was dedicated to restoring justice and helping people that are in need. She was a very strong believer in the Baha'i faith, but she was also a strong believer in the revelation of the manifestation of white buffalo calf woman. Okay. White buffalo maiden is a manifestation central to the Lakota religion. She is the primary manifestation of the religion that was revealed to the Lakota, and oral traditions relate that she brought the 7 sacred rites to the Lakota people. The revelation provided by the manifestations, each new manifestation provides us with a greater understanding of the revelation that the previous manifestation has provided. I'd like to read something from the words of Baha'u'llah. There can be no doubt whatever that the peoples of the world, of whatever race or religion, derive their inspiration from one heavenly source and are the subjects of one God. The difference between the ordinances under which they abide should be attributed to the varying requirements and exigencies of the age in which they were revealed. All of them were ordained of God, and all of them are a reflection of his will and his purpose. Just as humanity has progressively evolved from the stage of infancy into childhood, into adolescence, and hopefully someday into maturity, just as humanity has done this, so have divine revelations been unfolded in a progressive manner. I'd like to read something from a passage of the book. This, by the way, is the first book I ever read when I was looking at the Baha'i faith. It has always been, will probably always be my favorite book on the Baha'i faith, even though it was not written by one of the, by Baha'u'llah, revealed by Baha'u'llah or Abdul Baha or Shoghi Effendi or the Bab. It was written by J.E. Eshelmont, and it is called An Introduction to the Baha'i Faith, Baha'u'llah and the New Era. It's an excellent place if you want some information about the Baha'i faith and you're not familiar with it. It's a good starting point. And I want to look at some material written on page 122. On pages 122 through 124, the author talks about progressive revelation. Now, obviously, you're not going to read all of it, but there is a section, a small section that I do want to read. It's at the bottom of page 123 and goes to the top of page 124. And the author says that the religion of God is one religion, and all the prophets have taught it. But it is a living and growing thing, not lifeless, not unchanging. In the teaching of Moses, we see the bud. In that of Christ, the flower. In that of Baha'u'llah, the fruit. The flower does not destroy the bud, nor does the fruit destroy the flower. It destroys not, but fulfills. The bud scales must fall in order that the flower may bloom, and the petals must fall that the fruit may grow and ripen. Were the bud scales and the petals wrong or useless, that they then had to be discarded? No. Both in their time were right and necessary. Without them, there could have been no fruit. So it is with the various prophetic teachings. Their externals change from age to age, but each revelation is the fulfillment of its predecessors. They are not separate or incongruous, but different stages in the life history of one religion, which has in turn been revealed as seed, as bud, and as flower, and now enters on the stage of fruition. And that is an excellent summary of the concept of progressive revelation. The core principle, the basic principle of the Baha'i faith is the principle of the oneness of humanity. And we are told that this is the age in which this oneness of humanity must become reality. This is the age designated for that. There are a number of other principles, basic principles of the Baha'i faith as well, including one and only one God, the equality of men and women, the elimination of all prejudice, the elimination of the extremes of poverty and wealth, the independent of an investigation of the truth, as Elbaz referred to earlier. Universal education. Also, another principle is that the foundations of all religion are one. There is really one religion explained to us in greater detail over time. And another very important provision of the Baha'i faith, principle of the Baha'i faith, is that there is a harmony between science and religion. They are not enemies. They work together. Tonight, we're going to look at three of these principles. We're going to look at the oneness of humanity. We're going to look at the extremes of wealth and poverty. And we're going to take a look at universal education. And as we do this, we will explore, very briefly explore, how we can help translate these principles into reality. What can we do to make sure that these principles take hold and benefit society? So we're going to start out with poverty, or the extreme between wealth and poverty. The number of people experiencing poverty in the United States has steadily and is steadily increasing. It creates havoc throughout our entire society. The affluent, as well as the poor, are impacted by this. Nobody is immune. You cannot hide from the fallout, whether you are wealthy or whether you are poor. It should be emphasized that the Baha'i faith does not condemn wealth. The Baha'i faith does not condemn the wealthy. As Abdul Baha has said, the arrangement of the circumstances of the people must be such that poverty shall disappear, that everyone, as far as possible, according to his rank and disposition, shall share in comfort and well-being. We see among us men who are overburdened with riches on the one hand. On the other hand, we see those unfortunate ones who starve because they have nothing. We see those who possess several stately palaces, and we see those who have not any place at all where they can lay their head. This condition of affairs is wrong, and it must be remedied. This quote reminds me of a number of things that I have seen in my life, both in this country and in other countries. I want to bring up something that I saw in the late 70s in Nigeria. I was in an embassy car driving through Lagos, and the traffic in Lagos is very, very heavy, very congested. It was compounded at that time by the fact that there were military blockades everywhere. So we stopped at this one point, and we were stuck there for about 20 or 30 minutes. And when I looked out the right-hand window of the car, I saw a pile of garbage that was somewhere around 30 feet tall, somewhere around 40 or so feet wide. And there were children climbing all over this pile of garbage. They were not playing, they were searching. The more I looked and the more I talked to the driver, who was a Nigerian, an Igbo, it came to light that they were looking for food. That's what they were doing there. They were starving. Their families were starving. They were searching for something to eat. On the other hand, I knew a number of people in Nigeria, very wealthy people that worked with on some projects as well. I'll give you an example that they would pay the equivalent of $5,000 US a month to be members of a private club. That private club, of course, had a restaurant. That club imported all of their food. They did not serve Nigerian food. Not that there was anything really wrong with it, but beef in Nigeria at the time was tasteless because they were breeding their cattle to survive the tsetse fly, and they couldn't get the beef to taste better and still maintain that resistance to the infection of the tsetse fly. So they imported everything. Every member of that club, each adult member of the family was driving a late model Mercedes. That's a stark contrast to what I've seen everywhere in Nigeria, not only in Lagos, but also when I traveled out to the countryside among the Hausa people, among the Fulani people. It was just evident everywhere. In this country, many people go to bed every night hungry, very hungry. We have got to do something. We have got to take action to correct this, to alleviate this hunger, to alleviate this poverty. The poor, despite what some people believe, are our trust. We are a village of people. We are not a collection of individuals who live in isolation, concerned with only our own welfare. We are put here to worry about and take care of each other. We must listen to the midnight sighing of the poor. Now, I want to quote something from the Hidden Words of Baha'u'llah. If you're not familiar with the Hidden Words, here's my one of my copies. I have several. The Hidden Words, by the way, is a guidebook. It's a guidebook for the journey to the spiritual worlds of God. It contains the essence of the spiritual teachings of all the manifestations of God. Hidden Words were revealed by Baha'u'llah in Arabic and in Persian and translated by Shoghi Effendi. But this one hidden word, O children of dust, tell the rich of the midnight sign of the poor, lest heedlessness lead them into the path of destruction and deprive them of the tree of wealth. To give and to be generous are attributes of mine. Well is it with him that adorneth himself with my virtues. As I said, we're obligated to take care of one another. Poverty impacts everything. It impacts personal finances. It impacts government finances. It impacts crime, physical and emotional health, child and spousal abuse. It impacts productivity. Poverty, hunger, damage the soul. We are put here to make the world a better place than when we found it. We are put here to develop the attributes that we will need in the next life, which Baha'is refer to as the Abha kingdom, Christians refer to as heaven. But we have to develop these attributes. We have to develop these virtues. It makes it difficult to do that when you are experiencing great problems such as poverty. There is a political debate, an endless political debate regarding the solutions that one might take to alleviate poverty. A lot of this debate is meaningless, just words. Action is very rarely taken. And when action is taken, it is superficial action in most cases. And even then, it's not adequately enforced. There are some politicians that don't even address the issue of poverty. They don't have a policy to alleviate policy. They don't care about it. The poverty line for a family of four in the United States in 2004 was $19,307. In 2021, the poverty rate is $26,500, which equates to $2,208 a month. This is according to the Department of Health and Human Service poverty guidelines. Of course, many people make substantially less than the poverty line. And when it comes to rent, as of information provided on October 26, 2021, the rent prices in the United States have increased an average of 8.86% per year since 1980, consistently outpacing wage inflation by a significant margin. The nationwide average monthly rent is $1,164 for a one-bedroom apartment, which is 53% of the poverty line. Suppose you're a family of four earning $35,000 a year. That's over the poverty line. Are you okay? Can you make it without any help whatsoever? It's doubtful that you can. Because not only do you have to take into consideration of rent, you have many, many other expenses, as we all know: groceries, utilities, medical bills. Many people are not covered by health insurance, and in many states, they don't even qualify for Medicaid. And when they are covered by medical insurance, a lot of things are not covered, such as dental care. Without extra premiums, you can sometimes get extra policies. It's a serious situation. So how do we address poverty? What can we do? Well, there are a number of things that can be done, but you have to act based on your comfort level and your time and your capacity for doing things. If you look at the United States Constitution, there is an opening statement to the Constitution, and it says, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States." And of course, the Constitution consists of a number of articles and amendments. I'd like to also refer to Article 1, Section 8 of the US Constitution. Section 8 of Article 1 outlines most, not all, but most of the powers of Congress. It contains 18 clauses. Clause number 1, commonly known as the Tax and Spend Clause, states, "The Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and the general welfare of the United States." The US Constitution directs Congress to promote the general welfare, directs them to do this, not just says it's a nice idea if you want to. It directs them to do this. We must hold the government's feet to the fire. We cannot sit back. We cannot ignore inaction. One thing we can do is we can pressure our congressional representatives to enact and to enforce legislation eliminating the extremes of poverty and wealth. That's not a partisan issue. That's a human issue. The Latin language has 2 words for law: jus and rex. Jus, J-U-S, is the concept of justice. Rex are the rules for governing society. Now, of course, in English, we just use the word law, but you always have to keep in mind jus and rex. Rules are promulgated theoretically to promote justice. But when you look at the situation, when you look at many laws, they do not promulgate justice. Prayer and meditation are important parts of life. They are essential. We must pray, we must meditate, but prayer and meditation cannot, and they must not, replace action. We are responsible for making this world, as I said before, a better place for those that come after us. The Baha'i faith teaches us that we must act, and we must act responsibly. Through all of his manifestations, God has admonished us to take care of those that are less fortunate. Not ignore them, not to belittle them, not to be more concerned with our own welfare, not to ignore the crying children who in this country and throughout the entire world go to bed hungry every single night. We must provide our politicians a clear moral message. There is a book written by Reverend Jim Wallace entitled God's Politics. And in that book, there's one quote I would like to provide from that book: budgets with billions of dollars of increases for the military and massive tax cuts for the wealthiest, while cutting funding for overcoming poverty, should be named morally unacceptable. Should be named morally unacceptable. Again, I'm not here to advise anybody on what to do and how to do it, but I am here urging everyone to do something. Take some action that you personally feel comfortable with, whatever that is. Okay. We have to do things to eliminate the extremes of wealth and poverty. Now, partisan politics is blind devotion. We can forget that. There are many things that we can do that do not involve blind devotion. We are independent searchers for the truth. So when someone says something, someone proposes something, we should investigate what they say and come to our own conclusions. And if there's something that we feel is beneficial to society, we should act on it and encourage it. Baha'u'llah teaches that riches that are rightly used, rightly acquired, are honorable. They're praiseworthy. Services rendered should be adequately rewarded. In the tablet of Tarazat, he states that the people of Baha must not refuse to discharge the due reward of anyone and must respect possessors of talent. One must speak with justice and recognize the worth of benefits. Again, it's the extremes of wealth and poverty that must be addressed. The extremes. It is not just for some people to receive tens of millions per year, while those in middle management and below middle management are given less and less each year. The income disparity has greatly increased over the years. So let's move on to education. The Baha'i faith teaches universal education. Education is a key to everything. The affluent receive a much better education than the poor. They can afford the tuition at top-level private schools. And even if they attend public schools, they attend public schools in districts that spend much more money per student in those public schools than poorer districts spend. We do not operate our public education system in this country the way the Finns do. And they spend the exact same amount of money on every student in every school, whether it's a poor neighborhood or a wealthy neighborhood. The exact same amount of money is spent per student. Not so here. And without having an adequate education, the poor are limited in what they can do. They will never be able to substantially improve their lives. They will never be able to, or make it would be very difficult for them to find meaningful jobs with meaningful incomes. They will not be taught to truly understand and truly appreciate, what is going on around them. They will not make the effort to investigate on their own. They will be a repository for very limited information. Education has been the supreme aim of all of the manifestations of God. In the Baha'i faith, the fundamental importance and the limitless possibilities of education are proclaimed to us in the clearest of terms. Teaching is the highest work to which anyone can strive. Education is the foundation of both individual and social welfare. Our teachers are paid very poorly. Our schools are funded poorly. Our teachers take money out of their own pockets to buy supplies for their students. And there only is a small amount of that expense that they can deduct from their taxes. Again, in Baha'u'llah and the New Era, the author J.E. Esselmont says, at present, and these words were written over 60 years ago, originally. The latest copyright of the book is 1980, although the first edition was published, I believe, in 1937. He says, at present, a really well-educated man is the rarest of phenomena. For nearly everyone has false prejudices, wrong ideals, erroneous conceptions, and bad habits that are drilled into them from the time they are babies. How few of us are taught from our earliest childhood to regard service to humanity as the highest aim in life? How few of us are encouraged to develop our powers to the best advantage for the general good of everyone? Yet, as he goes on to say, surely these are the essential elements of a good education. Mere cramming, he says, of the memory with facts has comparatively little effect in producing noble and useful lives. And today it's even worse. People are crammed with completely false information that's not based on facts. Books are banned. And this week, books have been burned in Texas and in Tennessee. Unacceptable. We must do something to correct this. We must take an active interest in education and pressure our leaders to establish policies to make education much more effective and available equally to everyone. Education is important for lots of reasons. It's important for the development of the mind. It's important for the development of the soul. It's also important for the elimination of the extremes of wealth and poverty. Now let's go on to the third principle. The oneness of humanity. The principle that really pulled me into the Baha'i faith and caused me to seriously investigate. The oneness of humanity, of course, is the cornerstone of the faith, because without the oneness of humanity, nothing else is possible. Nothing. The rate of poverty and the lack of a decent education are far more apparent among minorities, African Americans, the indigenous population of this country, Hispanics, and other marginalized individuals. If we can teach everyone to believe in the oneness of humanity, this will help topple some of the obstacles to ending poverty, to ending pain and suffering and injustice. It is difficult to treat someone poorly when you see them as one of your own. Baha'u'llah tells us, ye are all the fruits of one tree, the leaves of one branch, the flowers of one garden. The unity of mankind and all created beings is the main theme of the teachings of the Baha'i faith. It's the main basic principle. As again, I said earlier, we talked about some solutions. I'm not here to tell anybody what to do or how to do it. But I am here pointing out that the Baha'i faith demands from us that we do something. Actions are important in the Baha'i faith. We must do something to promote the oneness of humanity. We must do something to promote the elimination of the extremes of wealth and poverty and promote universal education, among many other things. There are a number of different things that we can do. I'll mention some examples. For example, we can donate. We can donate to the poor. We can donate to organizations that support or advocate for the poor, that support or advocate for the marginalized, that promote justice. The ACLU, the Tahira Justice Center, which is founded by a woman who is a Baha'i attorney, and the Tahira Justice Center, excuse me, my mouth is getting awfully dry here. Coffee helps a little, but not a whole lot. They spend their effort helping people in distress. We have the Southern Poverty Law Center, the NAACP, a lot of organizations out there. Food banks, etc. We can teach virtues. There's a virtues project in the Baha'i faith. Should explore that project. You can teach virtues. It's important for us all to develop these virtues to the extent that we are capable. We can lobby and pressure government officials to do the right thing. We can vote. As American citizens, we are obligated to vote. We can hold our elected officials accountable. So if they promise something and then fail to accomplish it because of their inaction, we can vote for someone else. We can advocate for the poor. We can advocate for better education. We can advocate for the oneness of humanity and the elimination of all prejudice and the equality of men and women. We can lend a hand by working at, for free, of course, donating our time at food distribution centers, at homeless shelters. We can work for justice. There are organizations out there who work with convicted criminals that actually did not commit the crime. Project Innocence. You can work with them. And they get the trials to be reheard based on new evidence that other people have ignored. There are many things that we can do. You also have to keep in mind that minorities in this country, when it comes to the application of the law, when it comes to the application of criminal law, African Americans, the indigenous population, etc., the penalties they receive for violating the same law as a white person violates are much more significant than the white person gets. As an example, when it comes to voting, there were 4 cases of white men, or maybe 3 white men and 1 white woman, that were found guilty of illegally voting. I think 2 of them voted for their dead wives, 1 for their dead mother. 3 of the 4 received probation, and the 4th one received a prison term of 3 months. There was a black woman in Tennessee. She had been convicted of felony. She was released from prison. She wanted to, she knew she had lost her voting rights because she was a convicted felon, but now that she was out, she wanted to reinstate those rights. She got a written letter from her probation officer saying that this was perfectly okay to do that. She got a written letter from a couple of officials in the county government that said she could register to vote, even though she had been charged with and convicted of a felony. So she registered to vote. She was just sentenced to 6 years and 1 day in prison for registering to vote. She was black, not white. We have to be cognizant of this. We have to address this. We have to help alleviate this. This is a responsibility of every single person. Devotion to God implies a life of service. We cannot turn our backs on God's creatures without turning our backs on God. And I want to end this with another passage from the Hidden Words. O Son of Man, if thine eyes be turned towards mercy, forsake the things that profit thee, and cleave unto that which will profit mankind. And if thine eyes be turned towards justice, choose thou for thy neighbor that which thou choosest for thyself. And that's the end of the presentation.
Oh, thank you so much, Gary. You know, every day I thank my blessing to God. You know, I thank for all kinds of things that I'm blessed with. One of that is that association with what Baha'u'llah said, associate with righteous and cherish that. He said, cherish that and associate with righteous. And Gary Fleming is one of them. And I thank God for getting to know this gentleman. Without much ado, I'm going to pass it to Ray. Thanks again.
Excellent.
Thank
Thank you,
you,
Dr. Nasser. Thank you, Gary. That was great. We
Thank
did
you
have a
so
few
much.
questions. You're
Okay.
welcome. And we did have a few questions coming in at different times throughout your presentation. So some of these you may have answered, and it looks like some people may be looking for some elaboration on a few things. So we'll, this question came in as you were talking about poverty, and someone brought up the quote that you can't legislate morality. So the idea of the actions, taking actions, how is it that, I'm paraphrasing this part for them, that if we can't legislate morality, how is it that we go about changing people to want to do it rather than being forced to do it?
All right, excellent question. That is correct. We cannot legislate morality. But what we can do through legislation is to set up laws that will guarantee, at least in the legal sense, that people will be treated with respect, that they will be treated equally. Now, the basic, in addition to that, when it comes to actually changing us as people, this comes from a change within ourselves. And it cannot be legislated, but the law can at least put some force behind equality and voting rights, for example. But when it comes to, on a personal level, when it comes to getting to the point where you truly believe and practice in, for example, the oneness of humanity, this comes through your own research, your own investigation of writings, of not only spiritual writings, but historical writings, to get a good understanding of what has gone on before you, what people have been subjected to. Develop the virtues. I said before, there's a virtues project that the Baha'is have. Get involved with that, study the virtues, and develop those virtues. And as you do that, you will develop and change your heart. And if you can develop and change your heart, that's the ultimate answer to these problems. Legislation just simply gives us an impetus, a push in the direction. But it's a
Excellent.
necessary push. Thank you.
That was great, Gary. Thank you. Before we get to what may warrant a little bit longer of an answer, we did have someone just type in, devotion to God is a life of service. They're curious if that is your quote or a quote from the writings.
That's a quote from the writings. Now, we are here to provide service. Work is part of our lives. Work is devotion. Okay. And it doesn't matter what kind of work, whether you're a physician or you are a street cleaner. This is an act of devotion. Okay. And that is a teaching of the Baha'i faith. So whenever we do anything to help anyone else or to work, we are basically praying to God. And
Excellent.
it is in the writings. Okay.
Thank you, Gary.
And
So-
if that person, by the way, if that person wants to, you can give them my email address and I will send them some quotes where that's in the writings.
Okay, perfect. So if that person, they didn't say whether or not they want to be anonymous. If you would like that, feel free to message me in the chat and I'll be happy to provide Gary's email. So perfect. Thank you, Gary. These next two questions, these came in early in the presentation as you were starting. So I'll ask both at the same time, and feel free to elaborate as you please. In the beginning, you referenced the many manifestations of God. If someone were interested in learning more about some of the lesser known manifestations, where could they get that information? And the other thing you mentioned going into your presentation was as you're mentioning the tenets, this one came in, the harmony of science and religion. So the second question is, how does this affect the faith as science reveals new information? So the first one, where would someone find information on the lesser known manifestations? And the second question is, how does the harmony of science and religion affect the faith as science reveals new information?
Okay. Well, there are a number of places you can find information about the lesser manifestations. There are books you can find in the Baha'i library that deal with some of the lesser manifestations. Also, study anthropology, study history. If you read about people, you will see a reflection of their religious beliefs. You will begin to understand that they were provided with this revelation by someone very special. Okay. If you look at the Puebloans of the Southwest United States, they had essentially two major religions that were involved: the religion of the flute player and the now my mind is leaving me here. If I say it right, the Kasinga dolls are two different separate religions by two different manifestations. But if you read the or look at the oral traditions, which are now written down, you can read them and you can get an idea of the various manifestations that have come about in various parts of the world. And there are books that are published by individual writers that are Baha'is that talk about some of the lesser manifestations as well. So you can go to the Baha'i publication website and you can search that for some books, or Oceans and search it for some books. And oh yes, what was the second question again? I'm not hearing you. Are you muted?
Yep,
Yes.
there we are.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
so yeah,
Okay.
I'm back. So
Okay.
the second question was about the harmony of science and religion. So the idea, the question was, how does this affect the faith as science reveals new information?
Well, as Baha'u'llah and Abdu'l-Baha tell us, that there are new information in science. Science evolves. There's new information in religion. And when you have progressive revelation, a new manifestation that reveal a little bit more of the truth. And sometimes the religion can be a little bit ahead of science. Sometimes science can be a bit ahead of religion. And they eventually will equal out. And the Baha'i faith tells us that we must recognize that there is a harmony between the two topics. There is no disparity between religious beliefs and scientific beliefs. Okay, but they continually adjust as time goes on because the information in one expands and then the other has to catch up.
Very good. Excellent. Thank you, Gary. And that concludes the questions for this evening. So Gary, I appreciate the presentation and thank you for the thoughtful answers. Dr. Nasser, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ray, and also again, Gary. Charles, are you ready?
Yes.
Please.
Yeah, it's interesting that well, you'll see for yourself. The prayer that I chose is actually a prayer for America, and it begins, "O thou kind Lord, this gathering is turning to thee. These hearts are radiant with thy love. These minds and spirits are exhilarated by the message of thy glad tidings. O God, let this American democracy become glorious in spiritual degrees, even as it has aspired to material degrees. And render this just government victorious. Confirm this revelation to upraise the standard of the oneness of humanity, to promulgate the most great peace, to become thereby most glorious and praiseworthy among all the nations of the world. O God, This American nation is worthy of thy favors and is deserving of thy mercy. Make it precious and near to thee through thy bounty and bestowal.
Wow.
Abdu'l.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Charles. Ray, could you let everybody say hi and goodbye?